Let's clarify one thing for the very beginning before we jump into realms and dive into cloud computing stuff. You work for Amazon Web Services.
That's correct.
And that's the part of Amazon company, the big.
That's correct.
Big Amazon.
That's correct.
And Amazon Prime is also the part of Amazon company, right?
For me, it actually like almost totally different company. So, Amazon is quite huge company. It consists of multiple, sub companies. AWS, Amazon Web Services is one of those. Amazon Prime is a different one. And there's a few others. And at the end, pretty much, from one hand, yes, the same company, Amazon, but from the other, angle, really a different company.
But we could still say that you're somehow embodying Amazon company as one of the parts. Does Amazon Prime have anything to do with AWS? Does it host any videos on
Of course.
AWS?
So for AWS, Amazon and other Amazon companies like Amazon Prime Video is a customer. We treat Amazon retailer, Prime Video as a client. So yes, Prime Video is hosted on AWS. They're using AWS to deliver their, video VOD platform, for all the clients, and that's pretty much end of the story. So for us, for AWS, it's just one of many multiple clients. Just the brand is also Amazon.
Are you a fan of fantasy?
I'm a fan of multiple different stuff, Marvel, fantasy, totally, everything what is cool and trendy currently.
I think Marvel is more like science fiction thing, but as a big fan of Tolkien, I just wanted to, ask, what did you do to my boy, Lord of the Rings? I mean...
I have watched 2 episodes, and I will be totally honest, I really like it, but I also, respect your opinion, and that, some people might have a different opinion, and maybe they didn't like the new show so much. And I think it's typical, whenever there is a new thing, new product, new video, new game, there will be people who will like it, and there will be people who won't like it. And I also have to admit that there's always place for improvement. So, let's take this lesson, let's improve for the future. But I also think that, it was not so bad. And I personally, and I know other people who enjoy it.
That's exactly kind of an evasive answer I would expect from an Amazon employee. Tomek, since AWS is in top 3 cloud service providers globally, I can clearly see why Amazon did enter or invest in the cloud business back in 2002. But why an e-commerce company decides to enter cloud computing industry? Was it so obvious back in 2002 that the cloud will become the worldwide standard, and you will actually create something that will facilitate the most of the revenue income for Amazon in the future?
Good question, and actually the answer is no, it wasn't obvious, and nobody had idea that it would be so successful. I would even say like this, that when Amazon decided to create something which we call now AWS, the whole concept of cloud computing actually didn't exist. Yes, there was the term, but it wasn't existing in the real world. So why Amazon did it is because, for the, before this, for the last, 20 years, Amazon, the retailer, was, running highly efficient data centers across the globe. It was building internal services which were being used by internal developers to make sure that Amazon.com will work, will scale, and pretty much will deliver what is expected. And one day, somebody at Amazon thought, for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we were building the skills which we are currently using ourselves. Why not to offer those services, those skills outside? And this is how AWS was created. And nobody then thought that, okay, this will be something which pretty much everybody will be using. So at the beginning, the first, service, a server in the cloud. And this was completely new concept. You could go to the cloud, you could, spin up a server for 1 hour, for 1 day, for 1 week. After this, you can always, terminate it when you don't need it. This was so totally new concept that suddenly, companies, especially startups, fall in love, because suddenly they don't need to have like a lot of money to invest in real servers. They can just, take their credit card, provide the numbers, spin up as many servers as they want. They can check if their idea will be successful. If yes, great. If not, let's terminate it and let's think what else we could do.
So we could say Amazon figured out that there is something that they created for their own purpose in the first place that worked for the whole company because you supported developers. And you realize back then that developers will become sort of the foundation for the future of the computing. It's the business of the future relies on developers.
On developers, but not only. So pretty much, like you said at the beginning, AWS, discovered, realized that Amazon built something internally which works. Why not to start selling this outside? Yes, at the beginning, mostly to startups, and startups are mostly developers who wants, to build the new unicorn and so on. But after startups, even the huge enterprises, the biggest enterprises realize that this new concept of the cloud is bringing something which is totally new. Because before we had like two worlds. On one hand, we had enterprises, huge money, a lot of people, but very often, those problems when there was somebody with new idea, it was taking, a lot of time before to convince somebody and actually implement something. On the other hand, there were startups, but those startups had ideas, but they didn't have money. So pretty much this is why enterprises were not so much worried that startups might actually, eat their business. But suddenly one day in 2006, there is this new thing, the cloud. And suddenly, the startup which doesn't have got, money can really spin up a server and some other services, solutions in the cloud, and can actually, compete with enterprises. And because of this, also then enterprises realize we also need to use this new solution. We need to use the cloud because it just brings a lot of value, not only to the startups, but also for the enterprises.
And that's what Andy Jassy said back in 2006 after S3 cloud storage became public. He said that Amazon S3 helps free developers from worrying about where they are going to store the data, whether it will be safe and secure, if it will be available when they need it, the cost associated with server maintenance, or whether they have enough storage available. Amazon S3 enables developers to focus on innovating with data rather than figuring out where to store it or how to store it. Was security aspect something that bothered you in the first place back in 2006? Was that the biggest troublemaker, potential red flag for your first customers back in 2006, which would repel them from buying Amazon S3 service?
Sure. So pretty much from the beginning, it was clear that security will need to be, taken and done in proper way. Otherwise, nobody will be using the cloud. Because why a company would want to put their data into a data center which is owned by somebody else if they want to be sure that this is done in a proper way? And this topic of is the cloud secure? was really important for many multiple different companies for many years. Even when I joined AWS like 7 years ago, I remember the first, meetings which I had with clients, like, is the cloud secure? Should we go there? Why should we trust the cloud? And 7 years ago, still those were the questions which companies were asking. Why? Because they didn't actually understand what is the cloud and what kind of security functionalities are there. But now, after 7 years of me at AWS, I can totally tell you that the conversation shifts totally. Now, pretty much companies are saying, we want to go to the cloud because we want to be secure, because we know that, yes, we have got security team, but the security team might have like 5 people, 50 people, maybe even 500 people. But it's really hard to be up to date with all security topics and risks which are there. While the cloud provider, it will put much more resources to make sure that from the security perspective, what is provided there meets their requirements and the expectations of the clients. And maybe one more reasons, because somebody could say, okay, I'm working for the cloud provider, so it's clear that I'm saying this, but there's very good reason why this is actually working. And security needs to be job number 1. Job number 0 for everybody in the cloud. Because if there will be a problem, everybody will know about this. And it's really easy to lose the trust. And AWS is on the market like 16 years. And it's going up because companies knows that if they want to run their applications, if they want to store their data in a secure way, it's really hard to match the security level of the cloud in their own data center. I'm not saying it's not possible, but just the resources which a normal company would need to put to make sure that it's matching the security level of the cloud is just totally different level.
Once I was talking to one of my customers, which is doing analytics with AI, and we're talking about data retention and where to store it if you want to develop cutting edge AI models. Nowadays you need a lot of data, and then usually you have to collect that data by yourself because it's not publicly available. If you want to do something custom, especially for things like face recognition, that kind of thing, that kind of data is very sensitive. Does public, because AWS is a public cloud, by the way, what does it mean? It's public instead of private?
A good question, really, simple question, but also very difficult question. And there's no good answer for this question because pretty much the answer will depend on whom you will ask. From my perspective and from the perspective of AWS, pretty much the cloud is the cloud. Cloud has got, characteristics, scalability, global presence, pay as you go, and so on. And some people sometimes will distinguish there's a public cloud and private cloud. And private cloud, they will think this is my own data center. But is it? Maybe you have got a data center, maybe colocation, but is it like a cloud? In majority of the cases, no. Just because you will put some servers doesn't mean you have got a cloud. Okay, but some people will say, I have got, virtualization, so I can spin up some resources whenever I want. Yes, it's giving you some benefits which normally cloud provides you, but again, it's not pay as you go. It's not the global presence. It's just servers. So pretty much, depending on who you will ask, they might give you a different definition of the private cloud. But at the end, there's just a cloud, and the cloud has got those characteristics: scalability, elasticity, pay as you go global, and it's not only about the servers. So if you have got those, you have got the cloud. If you will manage to do it in your own data center, congrats.
because the reason why I'm asking about, the public aspect of AWS Cloud is that, if you hear that something is public, you probably think of it as something that has a public rights in mind, right? That it puts people's rights and privacy on top of all the priorities that you have. So if if somebody would like to store very sensitive data, like pictures of all the faces in one's company, how do you make sure it's secure and it doesn't leak out? Or does AWS have any access to those clusters in which you store the data, and then how do you make sure it's secure?
Totally. So let me answer like this. So first of all, like you said, because very often we're using the term public cloud, it brings those those different thoughts, like what does it exactly mean? So probably this is why AWS is not using the term public cloud. There is just a cloud, but still, let's go to your question. So, very often people also are wondering, okay, I will put my data in the cloud. So what does it mean? Does it mean that it's everywhere? I will put it here and suddenly it's like across the globe? No. So first of all, you specify the location. It might be EU, it might be USA, one of multiple different locations across the globe. And pretty much the cloud, AWS, will make sure that this data stays there. So this is the one very important aspects for multiple companies, especially with GDPR and so on. They want to make sure that, for example, the data stays in EU. But now about the data. So actually there is something which is called shared responsibility model. So if you are going to the cloud, it doesn't mean that suddenly you don't need to think about security because everything is done by the cloud provider. It's like this. When you had your own data center, you still had to think about security to make sure that your servers are up to date and so on. And exactly like this, the same works out in the cloud. So still there are things which will be done by the cloud provider, in this case by AWS, to make sure that some things are patched and so on. But on the other hand, there are things which you will need to do. Yes, you could put some data on S3, which you mentioned before, and tell AWS, make it public, make the whole world, have access to this. And sometimes you will want to do it, and this is a very typical case. But also on the other hand, you could say nobody should have access to it, only me, based only on those credentials and so on. So long story short, getting back to your question, AWS doesn't have good access to your data. You can also encrypt the data in a way that pretty much only the person who will have got the keys, this encryption keys, which you will want to have, will have good access to this data. So even if there will be an administrator who will make a mistake, nobody will be able to use this data because the data are encrypted. And AWS will help you to do it. Will tell you, this data are not encrypted, please encrypt it to make sure that everything is, the in proper security level.
So it's not like if you choose certain service, it's not like the data is encrypted by default.
No, and
you have to make sure.
This is a good question, and there is a reason why not. And we need to be backward compatible. And S3, is 15 years on the market. And when S3 was released, there was no encryption at that point. So after a few years, encryption was introduced. But to be backward compatible, we can't just introduce this default option pretty much. But at the end, it's just one flag which you change in your request. It doesn't cost anything. You just say yes, encrypt it. While new services, which are now released and so on, in majority of the cases, they have got like this flag and checked by the default because now it's possible. So at the end, it's really about making sure that both parties make sure that, from the security point of view, everything is at proper level. on one hand, the cloud is making sure there are things which the cloud needs to do. Like, for example, nobody will enter the data center because you don't want somebody to enter a data center where you have got data. But on the other hand, there are things which you are also responsible for.
Okay, who's Adam Stachlewski?
Adam Stachlewski, difficult question. So Adam Stachlewski is a new CEO of AWS.
And what is Adam Stachlewski's vision for AWS for the next decade?
I think this would be the best question, to ask him, but let me try to answer. Although, like I said, this probably would be the best question to him. AWS is currently the biggest cloud provider in the planet. Millions of clients, from startups to enterprises, pretty much everybody. Not only servers, but multiple different services. So very often I'm comparing the cloud to Lego blocks. You go to the cloud and you pick up those services, those Lego blocks, thanks to which you will build something. And now getting back to your questions, I think like the vision of Adam Stachlewski, but in general of AWS, is to make sure that what we are delivering is what the customers actually need. Because it's really typical, I would say, for multiple different companies to deliver something, to build a product which the company thinks that it might be useful, and at the end nobody will be using this. So it's really difficult to make sure that what the company is delivering is still matching the expectations of the clients. And I would say that this is still the biggest objective of AWS, to make sure that what we are delivering is actually in pair with expectations of people across the globe.
I was listening to a couple of AWS summits which you hold on in multiple locations globally, right? Every now and then, every 2 months, or
yeah, something like this.
Something like that. And I was listening to one presenter. I cannot recall his name right now, but one thing that struck me was his vision, or the aspect of innovation that you put a lot of attention to in AWS. And he was mentioning exactly the fact that AWS is putting a lot of focus on what the customer actually wants. And one amazing thing that I come across while reading about the S3 history was that S3 was built with 8 microservices in the first place, and now it's like 300 built by 2022. And he was referring to the fact that most, or actually all of those microservices originated from customer needs. So the customers are the ones that tell you, put this kind of microservice on this instance because I need it. And how does it work? Do you work with specific partners? Like, if you can recall any of those AI customers that require some data science services that help them out building their businesses. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, totally. So actually, the story here is really interesting, and pretty much everything is connected with. It's really hard to make sure that the company is delivering what the customers wants when the company is getting bigger. Because when the company is really small, like a startup, it's really easy to talk with all 5 clients and ask, what do you want? And then we'll implement it. But when you have got millions of clients, which requests are more important? Which requests are less important? Service team can't talk with everybody, because at the end they need to develop something and not just talk with clients. So at AWS we have got really simple but really effective way. So pretty much the solutions architect, account managers across the globe who works with the clients. So the final clients, they have got a task. And the task is like this. Whenever you are talking with a client and the client is saying, I would like something, but you don't have it. Maybe this is a new service. Maybe this is a functionality in one of existing service. So like you said, maybe a microservice which will do something. Then what those people, those solutions architect, account managers, they are required to do is they need to get back to internal system. There's like internal system. They need to find if there is already an information about such ask. If yes, they need to add +1. If there is nothing like this, create a new entry. Create a new entry so that the others will know that, somebody asked for this. And then on the other hand, what service teams are doing, every once in a while, they're checking the list and they're checking, okay, this entry maybe has got like 250 +1. It means that this is what the client wants. While, of course, there will be a lot of requests, just 1 +1, maybe 2 clients ask for this. So of course, for them, maybe it would be nice to have, but we need to measure, in some way, and pretty much the measure will be the number of the clients who are asking for this, and this will be the best feedback for the service teams, because this is the data. This is not, I think we need this functionality, because by I think we won't get far pretty much. But if you have got like really simple list of functionalities which are coming from the clients, which are saying, I want this, and then you have got like a list of 55 clients across the globe who are saying, yes, this is totally what we need, then you know that, okay, this is the way where we should go, because there is the expectations of clients.
I mean, from the Motion perspective, we have pretty much the same culture in terms of collecting customers' needs, but we don't have actually any physical system in which we can collect those needs, and they're actually pushed to entities inside company which is taking care of them and realizing those requests or needs on or whatever. We totally have to recreate that kind of stuff at Intel. What would you say is this the main reason why AWS is so successful in terms of growth? It's relatively young company, but it's like $74 billion revenue net.
I don't remember the numbers, but still getting back to your question, I think there's a few factors which are a part of why AWS is the most well-known cloud provider and the most popular cloud provider. And definitely, one of those is that AWS is not telling you this is the way how you should build your application. AWS is telling you pretty much, tell me what you need, what are the factors which you are thinking about, and then there are services, Lego blocks, products which you can use. And I will give you an example to be specific. For example, you could go to AWS and you could say, I want to run containers. I want to run Docker containers because they are so popular and so on. And very quickly you will realize that even on AWS, there's like 20 different ways of running containers. And some people could say like, oh my God, guys, you could, one is enough.
Simplify things.
Yes, like why 20? But there's a reason for this, because different clients, different companies will have got a different, expectations and reasons to go with one or the other. Some people will say, I want to be like cloud agnostic. I have got expertise. I like Kubernetes, so I want to use Kubernetes because this will give me, the freedom. And I have got already the expertise in this. So then AWS will tell you, there is a Kubernetes service for you. On the other hand, there are companies which will say, I don't have expertise in the containers, but I know that they are like, super useful and so on, but I don't have time to learn about Kubernetes. So there is a different service to run containers, which will be just much simpler for you. So in other words, the AWS, one of the reasons why AWS is so successful is that it will give you the freedom of going your way. It will tell you which are better paths than the other, but pretty much it's up to you. It's like machine learning. You could, create, your machine learning model in TensorFlow, in PyTorch, or in any other framework and so on. And AWS doesn't care. It will give you solution services which you can use for all kinds of different frameworks. And this freedom, I think, from my personal point of view, I think this is one of the biggest reason why AWS is so popular, especially across also developers. That it's your way how you will develop solutions. It's not like somebody's telling you this is the way how you need to do it because this is our products and we know better.
Doesn't it create any drawbacks? Like I'm holding one of those certificates for AWS, and it really creates some kind of barrier from my perspective that in order to use this amazing, magnificent tool as AWS Cloud Instance, you actually need to train yourself to become, fluent in using, the interface and to know how to set up things. Isn't that kind of a drawback from your perspective?
I think it depends. It depends on, what exactly you want to do. On one hand, yes, it's important, if you want to use the cloud, if you want to AWS, you want to build something, sometimes depending on which services you will use, you will need to learn a bit more about them than about the others, but it's because you have chosen this path. But also on the other hand, there are solutions which you can use without thinking about other options. Let's be specific. Let's say you want to build a machine learning model. On one hand, you could use SageMaker, which is like ML platform. You can do pretty much everything what you want to do there. You can use PyTorch and TensorFlow and other stuff, and it's totally under your control.
And it's intuitive.
You will need to have some experience, knowledge how to do it. It will make your life easier, but it will expect that you will need to learn something. You need to know something about ML before you will build your first ML model. But on the other hand, there are people who wants to build something, with ML. They want to build an ML model, but they don't have PhD. They don't have time to learn TensorFlow and so on. So there, for example, is something which is called SageMaker Canvas. And this is pretty much for those of people who don't have time and they don't care. They just throw the data, they specify a few parameters and they're saying, do this stuff for me. And then you don't need, to have PhD. The stuff will be just done automatically for you. So again, like I said a few minutes ago, it's about the freedom of going, a specific way. Yes, some ways will be a bit more difficult, like Kubernetes, like excellent solution, but it will require some expertise. But if you don't have expertise, you don't want to get it, there are multiple other options which you can go to, at the end to accomplish the same goal.
Okay. So as we talk about accessibility aspect, AI democratization is something that we put a lot of effort to here at Intel. And would a 10-year-old be able to learn how to use AWS?
I would say yes. But first let me comment on this. It's a collection of Lego blocks, 250 Lego blocks. Of course, there are some Lego blocks which are much more, complex, difficult, because, you will use them to accomplish, much more, specific goals and so on. But there are also services which pretty much are so simple to use that you can actually build something in a matter of a couple of minutes. And let me be specific. There is a service which personally I like the most, which is like Lambda. Lambda is a service which was created, I think, like 5 years ago. And when Lambda was created, everybody were thinking, what the hell is Lambda? Why to create something like Lambda? Lambda is like function as a service. Now we call it function as a service. It's a piece of script which you write, you put, and it just works. And a few years ago, when AWS created this service, everybody were thinking, why? We have servers. Why do we need something which is called a function and so on? Now, after 5 years, people, especially developers, love it because they don't care about servers. They just write a piece of script. This can be 3 lines of code. So yes, this can be this 10 years child who is like learning how to code. He can just write, hello world, and it will just work without thinking about servers, without thinking about the storage and about the multiple other stuff. So getting back to your question, definitely yes. A 10-year-old child will also be able to learn AWS, maybe not all services, but it's like nobody knows everything. It's just too big. It's from analytics to machine learning to IoT, edge computing, and so on. So it's not a point to know everything. It's about what do we want to achieve? What is our objective? Let's focus on those Lego blocks and let's do it. And this is why the cloud is so popular. And let me also add on this. Even if we are talking about machine learning, a few years ago, before the cloud, if you would ask somebody, okay, let's build a machine learning model, which will, let's say, convert text to audio, or this model will analyze images, then it will be a problem you would need to have expertise how to build this neural network. We need PhD, we need to have a few specialists and so on. But now with the cloud, it's a different story. On one hand, yes, you can go this path to build something by yourself. But on the other hand, there are built-in models. So there are like services which will do it for you without the need of coding anything. So there's a service like a Polish service, which works like this, that you just provide the text, you specify the voice, the language.
What is its name? Poly?
Poly.
I heard polio.
Poly. So, and it will convert it to audio. So, can 10 years old child use it? 8 years child can use it, because you just open the console, you provide the text, you specify the language, and you have got audio, based on ML model. But the same with image recognition. Some time ago, whenever you would have let's say a big collection of pictures, and let's say you want to analyze it and to see on which photos there's a dog, on which photo there's you, and so on. Again, you would need to build your own model, which would be quite time-consuming, expensive, and it would require some knowledge. Now with the cloud, and this is really important to understand that the cloud is much more than a server. There is again a service, a Lego block, which we can do it. So you just go to the specific service, you throw images, you are saying what is on the picture, and the cloud will tell you there is a dog, there is Barack Obama, there is somebody else on the picture. And this is the beauty of the cloud. So the cloud is for everybody, and you don't need to have an expertise, the knowledge, the PhD to actually to build stuff which a few years ago you would need to have.
So what would you say is this attracting force for businesses to use Amazon Web Services? Is it simplifying deployment? Is it shortening time to market? Is it making everything that's as simple as possible for the people to save their time and effort, so that they don't have to think about which how to set up a server or how to maintain it? Is that something that creates the momentum for your business as well?
No, it's a good question and very complex answer, because pretty much it's everything what you said, and different companies will be looking in the cloud something else, something different. Some companies which will go to the cloud, they will be looking for reduction of costs, and for them this is a great model. We can scale whenever we need. We can scale down when we don't need capacity, and then we are reducing the cost. So this is one of the reasons why the companies are going to the cloud. On the other hand, some companies will say, we're looking for the innovation. We have been running our IT, our business the same way for the last 10, 20 years. And clearly we are not, progressing in a way how we would like to go, while the world is, progressing quite quickly. So then, the companies will go to the cloud to use more than a server. A server is a boring stuff.
To play with all those building blocks.
The fun stuff when we are talking about, how to analyze 10 terabyte of data in in a second. The fun starts when we want, to use machine learning. The fun starts when we have got, a couple of hours to build completely new application because the clients expect this. So for some of them, innovation will be the driver. A different reason why the companies will go will be the speed, like you said. We know that the competition is there behind the wall. We need to quickly develop the system's applications. We don't have time to wait for servers a couple of months. We don't have time to prepare them, to manage the servers and so on. And then functions as services, containers, and so on. This is giving the possibility to spin up application in a matter of sometimes days, sometimes weeks, depending, of course, on the complexity of the application. But still, the speed in which we can build application is totally different in the cloud than a part of the cloud. Again, going back to the startups, that's why startups were so successful, because having an idea is one thing, but being able to quickly implement it and deliver it to the world is totally different stuff.
Hey, so let's spin up this topic a little bit, because I wanted to ask hypothetically, if I had a business running, I don't know, if I had a pastry, and I've been running 28 pastries across Poland, and I wanted to, expand globally and started looking for some kind of, I don't know, cost reduction or something that would, enable me to grow and scale. Would I use AWS? Well, that was my primary question, but now I want to ask, because AI's total available market is estimated roughly, something like $90 billion, and half of that, 46 billion dollars is in retail. Retail doesn't, ring any bell when you talk about data science or whatsoever. They just want to, do things quickly. And would this aspect of making things simple for them be the most profitable thing that attracts those businesses, enterprises from retail industry?
So let me answer like this. So definitely based on the description which you provided, I would say, analytics, machine learning is the way to go and to look for, opportunities to, to accelerate the sell and so on. But let me give you an example from the real world. A bit similar, of course, different, but a bit similar. Ryanair. Okay, it will be about Ryanair, but it will be also about, selling this stuff. Okay, so everybody knows Ryanair, flying company. They have got like 500, planes every day, about 3,000 flights. And the problem which they had, it was like a year or 2 years ago, is that every plane can be, you can put on this plane only one time every day and the stuff which you are selling on the plane. So food, water, drinks, and so on. And you need to know what to put there in a way that, people will buy it, you will sell it, but also if somebody will ask for something, you want to have it. And, how to plan this in a proper way, how to make sure that you have got on the plane what is needed, what people will want to buy, and so on. So what Ryanair did, they started collecting all data from the planes about on which routes, what products are being bought. They took the data and they built a machine learning model on AWS. They called it Panini Predictor. And pretty much what this model was saying, it was helping them to predict which product, which stuff like Panini and so on, they should put on a specific flight, because there is more likely that people will actually buy it. And what were the results is actually they increased the sales, they reduced the amount of products which they were throwing away after every flight. And at the end, also the customers were happy because when, during the flight you wanted to ask, for a food, panini or a different sandwich, it was more likely that actually the crew had the specific product because they knew about the past data that it's more likely to sell this stuff on this flight. So getting back to your question, if we have got a business, we have got 26 locations across the country, and we're looking for the ways how we could, increase our business, look for new opportunities, data. This is nothing new, but, maybe IoT, maybe let's see, how many people are entering our, our shop every hour and so on. Let's use machine learning to predict how many people should be in every shop on specific hours. And also let's use analytics, maybe machine learning to predict on which kind of stuff we should be actually, baking in a specific locations.
So there's such company which would like to use the data, put it on, I don't know, EC2 or S3 and then run some analytics. Do they have to have somebody, fluent with data science to create their models later on? Do they have to hire somebody, or does AWS have any kind of microservices that can do that kind of job for them?
Totally. So I would be far from saying that, if you will take a person from a street who doesn't have got any IT expertise, he will suddenly be able to build an ML model based on the data. I think we are not there yet. But if we have got, a person who is working in IT business, he doesn't need to be a data scientist. But still, he is, a computer internet is nothing new for him. Yes, he will find a service, like for example, the SageMaker Canvas, which I mentioned before, which he will be able to use without the knowledge in a specific domain. He will just take the data, he will throw it to the magic box. He will say, give me the data, the result. And after a couple of minutes, after a couple of hours, the magic box will pretty much prepare the model, which they will be able to use.
So if a company wants to invest in AI analytics and do some kind of automation for their business and optimization that would allow them to grow and scale, and they know that they have to do such kind of a thing, wouldn't it be more efficient cost-wise just to buy a server and put it somewhere in the backyard and let somebody to work on it, locally, instead of purchasing AWS service?
Sure, it might, but there is a few questions for which you don't know the answer. And this is the problem. First of all, you don't know, so what kind of server do I need to build this model? You don't know if this will be a small server, a big server, one server, maybe 10 servers, CPU, GPU, you don't know it. Nobody knows this at the beginning. You need to test it. That's why it's so crucial that, the companies don't want to invest in the hardware because they just don't know.
But let's suppose we have a customer that knows. For instance, if I work with some retail customer, who buy servers anyways because they have to store their data locally for any reason. So they're quite fluent with, purchasing right instances. Plus they have support from Intel account manager that can direct them towards the right solution. And what would be, the reason why should I direct them towards cloud service instead of on-prem?
So a couple of different reasons. So first of all, still I would argue that the situation is much more difficult than people expect that it will be at the beginning. You actually need to run the simulation to actually know exactly what will be needed. The other thing is that, the question is will you need this server with this hardware for the next 5 years? Because you are buying this for the 5 years. It won't be a cheap server, probably not. But while in the cloud, you can go to the cloud, you can still spin up a server with the best processor from Intel, Habana Labs, and so on. You can use it, for a couple of hours, maybe one day, maybe 1 week, depending on the complex of the model. You can train your ML model, and then you can go back to your home with a build model and saying, yeah, I spin up a server in the cloud. I was running this for 5 days. Then I terminated it because I didn't need it. And then I'm using this. And the cost difference between buying a hardware server for you and just renting it for 5 days will be just it's totally from different planet. So this is also the reason why is it so popular. And let me give you an example again about spinning up servers in the cloud. And there is a company which is called FINRA. FINRA is like a financial regulator from USA. So pretty much whenever you buy something via internet in USA, FINRA will validate the transaction and so on. So what they did, especially during the COVID times when everybody went online, they were like spinning up like buying stuff via Amazon.com and the others. Suddenly they had so many transactions which they had to process that it was impossible for them, to analyze it on premise because they need a lot of servers, and it's not easy to buy a lot of servers in a couple of days. So what they started doing, they use, of course, the cloud AWS, and to be specific, every day they were spinning up 100,000 servers, and then at the end of the day they were like terminating those because they didn't need it. The next day, again, 100,000 servers using this to analyze the data and going back. And of course, this is like okay, a max. Really, not every company needs 100,000 servers, but this is a great example of showing this beauty of the cloud. You can spin up one server, you can spin up 100,000, you can spin up them for like a year, 5 years, whatever, or you can spin them up for 5 minutes. And this is the beauty of the cloud. Why is it so popular?
Okay, so drive me through a little bit. So let's suppose I am this software company and I do analytics of whatever, and it's a relatively small company. Let's say you have 50 people or something, and I want to deploy my analytics to be run on many different devices like city surveillance, or I want to integrate my software with some kind of a VMS, to be served in different parts of applications, maybe in retail, whatever. Why should I use AWS for any reason? Why would I even consider AWS in the first place?
Again, a good question, but a difficult question because it will depend on a bit more factors which you might have in the company.
Okay, so what are the factors?
Okay, so expertise, the knowledge which you have got in your company. If you have got expertise, if you got people who know the stuff, then great. But maybe you are missing something. So then it's easier to go to the cloud where, the knowledge is there, really easy to get it. So there are some services which, like we said before, you don't need to have PhD, you don't need to have expertise, and they will do it. So this is the one factor. The other factor is, again, the speed. Because, you might be saying, I have got a data center. I don't need the servers. I already invested in this like 2 years ago. So why would I go to the cloud? Because maybe you have got a data center, but let's say you are analyzing this data, and it takes, let's say, 24 hours. And after 24 hours, you have good result. And then you are thinking, okay, now we know what to do and so on. But maybe you want to have these results quicker, maybe after an hour, maybe after 5 minutes, because then you can adapt to the situations much more faster, quicker, and so on. And you can do it in your data center because you don't have more resources and so on. So you just can't magically, make it faster. In the cloud, yeah, let's scale it, let's make it faster, pretty much. So this is the second factor. The other factor, you said that we have got a company, so it's about also going global. So, maybe you have clients across the globe. Maybe you have got clients, in Germany, in UK, in USA, Paris, France, and so on. And you want to make sure that those edge devices, which you are maybe producing and so on which your application is running, has got quick access, connection to data center, to the central location where the application is running. If you have got a data center, let's say, in one location, let's say Poland, first of all, it will be quite far from, the devices in USA. It might be a problem. It might not be, but it might be a problem. So you want to make sure that what the cloud will give you is making sure that you are able to, to spin up a resources in a data center near the edge location where your devices are, and you have got the same experience in using this. Because again, you could go to a local data center in USA, but you really want to, to work with multiple different providers, different interfaces, and so on. You want to have the same one API to manage everything, because otherwise you won't scale.
But now it sounds like it's some kind of a service for bigger companies. If I have just 50 people and I'm relatively small and I'm starting locally, would it be price wise something that I should pick for the start?
So whenever we are talking about the price, this is also quite interesting topic, because whenever you will ask, even I will tell this from my experience with a company, and I will ask, how much do you pay for servers, for the data centers? Very often they won't know, or they will just provide the cost of a hardware from a provider. But there is much more. There is location, there is like cooling, electricity, and so on. And then at the end, when you will actually combine all of those with the electricity and so on, very often it will actually turn out that the cloud is actually is the same, or it's even cheaper. But again, depends. Going back to your question, again, it's also a question, what is important for us? Maybe a local data center, maybe our own server, which we have got next to our desk, is cheaper. But what will happen if this server will break? Let's say, this is a server next to your table, somebody spilled, a bottle of water. No more server, no more application. And now the question is it a problem for you? How much are you screaming then? Because it might be your production system. While the companies which are going to the cloud, one of the reasons is to make sure that the system will be working. And the stats are very clear. The data centers in the cloud are working much better than the local data centers, because of making sure that they are highly available, multiple locations across multiple different geographic locations. It's just easier to make sure that the application system, which should be working, is actually working. And it's also very important to remember about this, that the cost is also the cost of what will happen if your server will break.
What is the best AI hardware nowadays?
Sorry?
What is the best AI hardware nowadays?
Or
let me rephrase that. What do you think among all those accelerators and platforms hardware-wise for any AI ML applications? What do you think has the brightest future in a long time perspective?
A difficult one, and I don't know if I will be brave enough to
what your intuition is telling you. Or from practical point of view, what is the most practical thing?
I will skip the question. I will skip the question.
All right, let's pass on it. So, what AWS is doing with Intel. So we know that we have EC2 instances with Habana, but Is there a big portion in terms of processor mix? Because AWS has also their own processors for multiple purposes. So what are we doing? What do we have in common?
Yeah, so it's true that AWS, like I said before, is like a platform of freedom. And exactly the same with processors. There are like multiple different options, like Inter and others. You can even spin up now, Apple servers in the cloud.
M1s?
Yes, yes. So this is also quite interesting, nobody was expecting that, the cloud it was always about Windows and Linux. And now, yes, you can also spin up an Apple. But also it's true that, from the beginning, Intel, it was always Intel. The first servers which AWS was providing, the first EC2 based on the Intel, and still majority of servers, which we provide are based on the Intel. So regarding the collaboration and, let's put aside, the stuff about, new processors which are coming from Intel, from Habana Labs and so on. There are also mentorship and scholarship programs for ML students and so on. But what I would like to show you is I brought some like 2 devices.
Exactly, because we have some playground here.
Yes, because very often when you think about the cloud, you think about it's a software. You can't touch it. It's just somewhere there is software and this is the cloud. But actually, across those 250 different services, there are some services which you can touch. Some of them are, let's say, more like a very professional ones and so on, but there are also like 3 of them, I brought 2, which are dedicated for learning ML.
So is this the part of AWS?
Yes, okay. Yes. Sometimes joking that...
Is it connected to cloud? Right
yes, no, not now, but pretty much you could. And sometimes I'm joking that those are like, toys. So this is Deep Composer and this is Deep Eraser. So what are those? So this is Deep Composer. And the idea is like this. You connect it through the cable to your laptop and then you connect it to the cloud and you play on it. Okay, so keyboard. So what's the point and so on. At AWS, there are built-in models which will add to the song which you will play other instruments. So you are just using piano, and suddenly after 2-3 seconds, like 5 or 6 other instruments will add music based on what you played, pretty much. So there are like built-in models which are already learned how to, to detect, this is more jazz, this is more techno and so on, and it will pretty much add the other instruments.
Would you use that commercially if
so
I want to become a wedding DJ?
You could, okay, but so yes, the question is like, so why AWS is doing this?
Exactly.
So let me get back to this and to the answer after I will describe this one, because with this one it will be a bit easier. And this is definitely, from my opinion, much more, interesting one.
It's a car.
This is a car. And this is called Deep Eraser. This is like the second edition of this. I can remove the top of it. Let me do it. And this is a car, of course, with Intel inside. Of course, the Deep Composer also had Intel inside. So what is this? This is self-driving car. What you do, you build your own model using reinforcement learning to teach the car how to drive on the track. So you build like, a script, which will then be converted to ML model. You can, build a special track on the ground. The model is being built on AWS, then you upload it to it. Then, you see that there are like, 2 cameras, and then the car is automatically driving by itself on the track. If you don't, this is the new version. This has got also the radar, so it can detect some obstacle and so on.
Is it LiDAR?
Yes. If you don't have a car, there's also a version to do it exactly the same in online version. So there's like a simulator and so on. So you actually don't need to have like a device to actually play with it, to play with reinforcement learning and so on. So now getting back to the initial question, why AWS creating a toy? The answer is very easy, because let's say you have got a company, you have got maybe 50 developers, data scientists, and so on, and you are telling them, from tomorrow we will be using machine learning. Go and learn TensorFlow. It won't be the most exciting stuff in the world. They will be like, oh my, oh my, oh my. But if you will tell them, you know what, tomorrow we're doing a bootcamp. Tomorrow, divide into a few teams, and we'll be checking who will build the model for the car, and the car will drive the truck, the quickest. And then companies are doing this. They're organizing the bootcamps, they're competing, and pretty much at the end, they are trying to make sure that inside of the companies, people, this ML innovation is grown. And at the end, think about this, at the end of the bootcamp or at the end of workshop, whatever, people are like, oh my God, I built a self-driving car. And it finished the track like in 5 seconds or something. Because at the end, it's about the speed, if it will properly, go through the track and so on. On YouTube, you can find excellent movies of those. There's even a league where people can compete. You don't need to do it even in your company. You can, create a model on your own, upload it to AWS. And AWS will check what is the performance, the speed in which the car is, solving the track. And pretty much if this will be fast, you will be invited to reInvent, to the Las Vegas conference, to actually try it on the real car with the audience.
Is the data collected throughout this competition somehow being used in academic way, because I know that Alexa division has something like Alexa Prize, where they give an opportunity to users, to contribute somehow to create a 20-minute chat with Alexa. And is this something similar that you can use that kind of data?
So there is something which is called the Deep Racer Champions for students. So pretty much students at universities can also participate this. They have got access then to the console, and for free they have got like a specific amount of hours which they can use to train the model and so on. So from this perspective, like it's also like dedicated for students, to grow this, this perception that machine learning, artificial intelligence can be actually also interesting. It doesn't need to be like, only boring stuff. This is a CSV. Let's build a model. Yeah.
So it's for students, but not for 10 years old, or are you also involved in this kind of scholarship?
So 10 years old, I would say like this, she will be able to use it, because there is like by the default, like a model, like a script, which the person will be able to just, to spin it up, like run it.
Lego Mindstorms, something like that?
So there's like a script, and they will be able to use it, and they will, without the prior knowledge, they will be able to see on the console like the car moving through the track and so on. So everything is happening in the console. And this one, the real device, you can also buy it, of course, on Amazon.com. And this one costs about $600. And you can also use the real device, but then you will need also to build the track, which has got specific characteristics and so on. So I would say the car itself, I would say probably not for 10 years old. I would say it's more for real boot camps, whenever the company have got multiple teams, they want to organize the track, and you really want to see that the car is driving by itself, because the simulation on the console is one thing, but when you are seeing this thing going, like a crazy through the track, it's like, it's totally different emotions.
And it's learned by itself.
Yes.
So it must be running some heavy duty GPU inside.
So I would need to check the details. I don't remember exactly. So it's like this. The model itself is being built on the cloud. So you need to use the cloud AWS to prepare the script for reinforcement learning. Then the model is being built. Then you define which server, GPU, CPU will be used, how much time, and so on. Then at the end, the model, when it's built, you see the results saying, okay, it's like 90%, accuracy, maybe more, and so on. And you see also the video through the simulation, as the car went through the track and so on. And if you are happy, you then upload it to the car itself, if you have got it. And then if you have got a track, then you just, turn it on and you see the real car driving. So on it, actually, from the processor perspective, there is like an interprocessor, but it's like the heavy stuff was already done on the AWS side pretty much.
So how is the software optimized? I mean, I imagine that you have to execute it in some way. Is there any special API for it? Is it custom API for the purpose of this device?
So pretty much there are like two ML models. Actually, there are two ML models. One ML model is being used to detect what is in front. So they're like, those two are actually a part of a third device, which I don't have with me. There's also something which is called deep lens. A deep lens is like a ML camera. So there is like a model which is provided by AWS, which will detect what is in the front. So the track itself, and the model is already trained. It will provide to your script for the reinforcement learning information about where's the track, are the four wheels on the track, are you turning left, right, what is the speed, and so on. So those information will be sent to your script for building the model itself. And then at the end, you just upload the model and you don't have more control. You can't control the car going left, right, and so on. Then it's totally automatic.
So you just build the model. And the whole scholarship, the whole point of this exercise is to learn how to build models using reinforcement learning?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you don't have any access to the source code, so you can...
I'm not sure about that. So definitely to use this, you don't need and you shouldn't use the source code.
I'm asking because I wanted to use OpenVINO instead.
So I'm not sure if the source code is publicly accessible on the GitHub or something. Maybe yes, maybe not. I'm not sure, but to use it, you don't need it. But I'm not saying it's not somewhere there publicly available. You would need to check.
Okay, so that's scholarship, and now back to becoming a wedding DJ.
Yeah, so pretty much this one is a bit more simple because this one is with this you actually are doing something. You are building the model. You are testing reinforcement learning. With this one, the story is much more easier. You just play. And then you see the other instruments. The idea about this is like this. This one is showing, and you can play with reinforcement learning. Why this one is using the different type of machine learning, artificial intelligence, which I forgot the name pretty much, but this is just a different type. And with this one, you don't have a lot of way to do something with this. It's just about, look, I play, and then the magic box in the cloud is adding other instruments. So this is totally much more like, this is for 10 years old child, also for 8 years old child. The child won't be able to do much more. It's more about having fun and show, look what I did.
Is it safe to give it to your 10-year-old, to make sure, he learns some of the music arts, but still you have to listen to that all day long?
So maybe it's a good idea to have like a good, a room where,
headphones.
Yes, exactly, because otherwise it might be quite annoying to listen to all the time. Also, still, quite interesting stuff, for learning a bit, like to play on piano. Definitely a bit more like a toy than anything else, but still interesting. And like I said, the last one was a deep lens, but I didn't took it. The deep lens was the first of such devices which AWS released a few years ago. And this is a camera pretty much which works like this, that you build ML model for detection for image detection, you upload it to this device. And then when you have got this on this is a part of the device or of the camera, you put the camera somewhere and pretty much you show something in front of the camera, and on the camera there is this model which you built for detecting, for example, let's say house people in your home. So you have got, let's say your home, you have got your doors, you put the camera in front of it, and whenever somebody is entering, the camera will detect on itself, oh, this is mother, this is a husband, this is a daughter, and so on, and it will send to you information, okay, this person entered the house. And this is again not for the production, it's just for showing people that it's actually easy and doable to create a thing on a device which will be able to detect people, and then you can do something. For example, when in this case which I said, there's a door, somebody is entering, let's say this is a wife, the camera is detecting the wife entered because you trained the model, and then the information then the IoT is sending the information to you. And for example, you're using a different service, Polly, which is saying, hello, wife, nice to see you, and this is the magic, like connecting the Lego blocks suddenly.
And the wife answers, what did you do this time?
Maybe. So
why you're being so polite. Tomasz, you have over 7 years of experience in AWS collectively, and you're head of technology. So how do you become a head of technology in AWS, and why does it require Harvard diploma?
Oh, so again, the difficult question. So 7 years at AWS, that's correct. I joined AWS as a solutions architect. A solutions architect at AWS is a role which is about working with clients and helping them to build, design solutions based on their specific situations and how to map it to AWS services Lego blocks. And during those 7 years, I talked with countless of clients and so on. I built my own expertise across multiple different domains because AWS required this. And no, you don't need to have Harvard diploma. It's more about willingness of learning, not being close in one domain. Even IT is so wide. It's from containers, analytics, IoT, and so on, machine learning, that it's important to be open to those new different situations, domains, because at the end, the client is not interested in machine learning. They are interested in solving their problem. If you will solve it with machine learning, great, but maybe you will solve it with typical analytic stuff, or maybe a different way. So it's really important to know that, IT solution at the end is just IT solution. It's about the problem. So I learned this, and yes, so currently I'm also managing the team. The role of head of technology can mean multiple different things across the multiple different companies. And in case of AWS, this also means that I'm managing the team of solutions architects. So initially I was a solutions architect. Now I like to think that I'm still having got this inside, but I'm more like managing the team of solutions architect across a few countries, which are working with end clients to make sure that their business needs are met and solved.
Okay, because I thought that you're managing the AWS technology as a head of technology.
So it's like this. It's also making sure that in this part of Europe, which I'm managing, we are focusing and building our skill set in a way which the market expect this pretty much. So it's also about the strategy of the local market to make sure that we're going in proper direction. So getting back to your question, my role is connected with multiple different, tasks and responsibilities, to make it a bit more easier. Yes, it's a bit of managing people. It's about, making sure that the strategy of AWS in this part of the Europe is consistent and it's going in the proper way, and a few different type of responsibilities.
So how's it going for you in the region?
Oh, I would say very good, very good. We are, developing. We'll be spinning up new AWS infrastructure actually in Poland this year, because till this time we didn't have our AWS region, so the data centers here. This year we'll be opening the first location, something which is called a local zone. So I think this is the best evidence to show that, the cloud is still for many companies a new stuff, but this is something which is growing. And also, the type of the companies which are publicly talking about the cloud, they are using the cloud AWS is growing. A few years ago, the list was quite, limited. There was a lot Polish Airlines, but now we are officially saying on it. The biggest Polish portal is on AWS. Aviva, so
it's partially German.
No comment here. No comment here. Aviva, so the insurance company, and you would be thinking that insurance companies are with financial companies are much more like they won't go to the cloud so quickly. They are using the cloud. So getting back to your questions, we're doing very well.
Okay. How many workers do you have in Warsaw? Is Warsaw the only location you are nowadays in Poland?
In Poland, there's a couple of different offices of AWS, but Warsaw will be the main location. I won't be able to give you the numbers.
Roughly over 100.
I won't be able to give you. We don't break the numbers.
Okay.
We don't. No. So this is something. AWS is sometimes quite secret company also. So this is something which we also don't break. So we don't break the numbers of that place.
So if you mentioned secrets, I wanted to ask about, do you have any secret service for AI? I mean, every company has some kind of laboratory where they develop technologies of the future, like we have Intel Labs, for instance. Do you have something like that?
So if there would be, I would not be able to tell you. So I need to to pretty much to pass the question. And let me answer a bit in different way. I know that this won't be the answer for your question, but also something about secret stuff.
Okay, W.
So AWS works across the world using regions. So region is like a location where we have like our data centers and so on. There's like about 27 of those across the globe. And there is actually like a secret regions. Secret regions are regions of AWS, so data centers, like collections of data centers, which are in USA, which are dedicated only for specific, usually government or organizations, entities. And then you as a normal, end user, you won't be able to see this and have access to it.
Okay. But no secret lab for unsupervised learning, super big models.
No comment here.
Okay, 007. What about Alexa? Because we also host, DevOps for Alexa team. There's quite a big Alexa team here in Gdańsk, the city in which we are right now, and how important it is for a Amazon company, and what is the level of cooperation between AWS and Alexa?
I won't be able to tell.
All right, so secrets everywhere. Any advice for somebody that would like to pursue their career path, coming back to your story with AWS and becoming the head of technology? Any career advice for somebody that would like to shape their future towards certain type of technology? I mean, cloud is very, it's a compound of multiple different modalities. And how did you come up with a conclusion that, well, yeah, this is something that I want to specialize in? And what would you say?
So I think it's like this. The cloud is not the answer. The cloud is a way to get to the answer pretty much. And never before the cloud, it was not so easy to check, to validate so many different IT domains. And, maybe you want to be a developer. So you start, your career as a developer, and after 5 years, you're thinking, maybe I did a mistake, but, it's hard to sometimes to turn left and now be a data scientist and so on, or ML specialist and so on. But now with the cloud, it's totally different story, because you are going to the cloud and you have got the keys to the biggest playground in the world. And on Monday, you can play with containers. On Tuesday, you can play with machine learning. On Wednesday, you can play with IoT. On Friday, you can play with networking, security, and so on. And this is why I'm saying that the cloud is not the answer. It's just a solution how you, as a, let's say, IT specialist, who's maybe at the beginning of your career, can use it to very quickly check which way is for you. Because it's not about knowing everything, like I said before. You want to specialize in some area, but never before it was so easy now to check this. Because let's say there's no cloud and you are at university and you're thinking, maybe machine learning is the way for me, but I don't have a GPU server. I don't have resources, to train my own model to analyze those 1,000 pictures. And what then? Then you're thinking, so I don't know if this is for me. So I will be a Java developer, much more easier from this perspective. And now with the cloud, still hard to say if this will be for you, but you can validate it. You can check it. You can go to the cloud. You can spin up a GPU server, even for free. There's a lot of resources which won't cost you at all. You can play with it. And after a day, you can say, yeah, this is for me. Or you can say, okay, I played with it, I tested, and I know that I want to be a Java developer because it was better for me and so on. So, and even when I'm talking with the clients, with multiple different clients, the bigger the better, because very often I'm sitting in the room, there are like multiple different IT specialists, and they're like, I'm asking, what are you doing? I'm a network specialist and have been doing this for the last 15 years, 20 years, and so on. I'm, managing servers. I have been doing this for 15, 20 years. Never before it was so easy to suddenly change the direction, to start doing something else, because the life is too short to be only with one stuff. And I think for me personally, I'm a tech person. For me, this is one of the best things about the cloud and about AWS. And even when somebody is asking me, like personally, why do you like to work for AWS? Because you can't get bored there. On Monday, you are working again. You are managing, building Kubernetes cluster. On Tuesday, you are building, ML model. And on Wednesday, you are building some kind of IoT, device solution and so on. So this freedom and this possibility to explore new IT domains is something which is great for people who work for AWS like me, but also for people, IT specialists, maybe who are already, who have been doing the same for the last 20 years, or for those who are at the beginning of their career and they are thinking and they are not sure which way is for them to go.
I agree. This is the beauty of our times, that you can just go on and explore so many different possibilities, especially, not everyone has, again, not to, get biased by being the part of the big corporation, but not everyone has this luxury to try. But if you can, you would say that the best thing you can do early as a fresh graduate is just go on and try multiple things. And
Totally.
work for AWS.
You don't need to work, but start using AWS. It will be enough.
That's a good disclaimer at the very end of our conversation. Thank you very much, Tomek.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.